This conference will now be recorded.
Spring Fling on the 21st of March. It'll be out at Hillcrest. And we have a speaker coming in that is an author. He will be selling her books there as well. So you need to mark your calendars for the 21st at Hillcrest at 7 p.m. And the speaker is Meg McAndrews Cowden. I don't know her book, but apparently it's very highly regarded, and she'll be signing and selling them there too. So you need to make sure the 21st at Hillcrest is on your calendar so you don't miss her talk, because it's going to be fabulous, I'm sure. As will today. Do you know her?
No, is there a charge to attend the
No.
spring fling?
Free will offering. Yeah, and she's from Sioux City.
Oh, okay.
So does our gardening, right? So I want to make sure you know that about that. If you've got seeds that you haven't asked for yet, you can still get them. Bring a list over. We'll get them pulled for you. There are seeds over there that you can pick up. I think everyone knows the books are over there to look at the native flowers so you know what they look like, because keeping track of all those Latin names sometimes just too much. So, right?
Yeah.
Are you good with Latin names?
No, but I thought I was gonna, learn all the Latin names when I started off on all this.
I have a friend who
That didn't last very long.
I don't know the Latin names. But it is the way to go, because I've lived in a few places and they call things different names in different locations. So we're supposed to all use those Latin names. So we have a guest speaker that I'm so excited about from Twin Silos. And you may have seen her down at the farmer's market selling fresh cut flower. And that's going to be our topic today. It brings sunshine into our lives on this after spring day. Are you ready to go?
I'm ready.
Okay, I'll let you go.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm Sherry Rogers Conti, and as Shan said, I'm the chief flower grower, leader, flower harvester at Twin Silos Flower Farm. And somebody asked me once, what do you mean you're a flower farmer? I said, well, if you grow flowers, you're a gardener or a grower. But if you sell any of your flowers, then you're considered a flower farmer. So because I sell as many of my flowers as I can, I consider myself a flower farmer. Where are you located? I'll tell you that in just a second here. Okay, first of all, I just had to include this and then share this with me last year. It's supposed to say flowers produce eggs, but when you read it quickly, it's like flowers produce eggs. And as we know right now, we all wish that we could get more eggs. Flowers are wonderful, but they don't do that. Okay, this is my flower farm. You can see why I call it Twin Silos Flower Farm, but I am 1 mile north of the little intersection in Utica. So you can get there on 435th going north, and take that jog through Utica, go 1 mile further. Or you can turn on 306. If you go up 81, you can turn, and it's the Utica corner up at the top of the hill on 81, and then you can go west, and then you'd have to go north again. But anyway, very easy to find. It's paved the whole way. Back when I thought I wanted to have a flower farm, I was agonizing about how can I do that in my backyard, take enough yard space to grow flowers to sell. And then I thought, well, duh, my husband has a farm property. So that's why it's out there. And that was a picture from last season when I actually had sunflowers. And before a few mishaps. Anyway, not here to talk about flower farming, which is always a challenge. But you can see that My journey started with learning as much as I could about growing flowers, especially in mass, and what kinds of flowers to grow, and how to sell my flowers. And so that's kind of what I've been doing. I also grow decorative pumpkins for your porches in case you're interested. Okay, so I'm here today to talk about, let's say you want to grow some flowers that you can use in bouquets, and do that in your backyard and not take up an eighth of an acre like I do. So first of all, we need to know what is a cutting garden. And it's different than just a landscape bag with some flowers in it, okay? And why in the heck do you want to have a cutting garden? Okay, so what is it? Its sole purpose is to grow flowers that you can harvest or cut that can be put in a vase or a bouquet. So there have to be some characteristics about these flowers that make it usable. Another thing about a cut flower garden, it's not a lovely landscape. It's going to be kind of a work garden, utilitarian. So it should be separate from your landscape, although I don't know what the harm would be to have a few of your cut flowers here and there in your landscape, but mine is separate in my backyard from my landscape stuff. The whole point is to cut the flowers, not to just gaze upon them as they're all in bloom. Okay. So in fact, a lot of times you're cutting them before they bloom. So that's what it means to be a utilitarian. You're just harvesting them so that you can have long base life. So not every flower can be used in a cut flower garden. And it is easier now than it has been in the past to find flowers that are considered to be good for a cut flower garden. So we'll talk about that. So anytime you have any questions, be sure to let me know. So benefits. Well, obviously you're going to be outside because you do have to put some work into these. Everybody is delighted by flowers and they always are so beautiful. Makes a great gift. You know, what neighbor doesn't love a surprise bouquet of flowers once in a while? Or you have a friend who's sick, or you just want to brighten someone's day. And I mean, all summer long, I've got a bouquet or two of flowers just in my house that every time I walk into the living room or the kitchen, it just makes me happy to see them. You can teach the young people about the joys of growing a garden. And you can just keep learning. Believe me, I have learned more. In the last 3 years, I would say I've pretty much given myself a master's degree in growing flowers. There's a lot to learn and a lot that I still need to learn. So what makes a good cut flower? Long stems, the number one thing. If you've got a flower that only grows to be 6 inches, that's not work. I can think of, like in my landscape garden, I've got a lot of little shorties that are nice on the borders. They're real pretty, and looking at them from the patio is lovely, but they wouldn't work in a vase. A cut flower, because of the whole harvesting that we'll talk about, they do tend to last a nice long time in the vase. They're fresh when you cut them. They're probably, as I said, not even open yet. And so they will last a long time. And then a lot of these are what we call cut and come again flowers. In other words, you harvest them and then they send up more shoots and you get more blooms from them. So you'll get flowers for quite a while in the season. By the way, these are marigolds, but those are marigolds that end up with stems that are about 18 inches long, and the blooms are quite large. So the first type of cut flower, of course, we all know what annuals are, but there are some cut flowers that are annuals that just You have to replant the seeds every year because they don't overwinter. So you can see there's a whole list of things. Cosmos, Lisianthus, Status, Celosia, which is a good, like a accent flower. Sunflowers are probably the #1 most popular flower that I grow. And I sell out every time I've got sunflowers. And the sunflowers, we'll talk about a little bit more, but there are many types of sunflowers, but there are some types that are really great for cut flower gardening. Straw flowers, marigolds, as I showed you in the last picture. Zinnias are very popular. And again, there are zinnias that are real shorties, and then there are zinnias that get really tall, but zinnias are one of those cut and come again. If you cut low on the stem, same with cosmos, they're going to send up more shoots and you keep getting flowers. Scabiosa, and a lot of people know that as its other name called pincushion flower. And I think I have a picture of that coming up. Basil is a great filler flower, but you have to get, there's Mrs. Burns lemon basil, and there's a cinnamon basil, but they'll grow quite tall. And then you cut those, if you can keep them from wilting, they're hard to keep hydrated right away when if you harvest them and it's too warm out and you don't get them in a cool spot right away. They do tend to wilt and maybe not come back. Sometimes they look a little wilty and then they sit overnight in water and then they perk back up. But they make, if you can get them to perk up, they make a great filler flower. Ageratum are a real pretty little burst of blue in a bouquet that's a nice accent. And of course, there are many types of snapdragons, many colors, which is the nice thing about, there's several colors and types of cosmos. Same with the straw flowers and the status. Straw flowers and status are also great to dry and use even as a dried flower. You can stick those in a bouquet down the road. And of course, zinnias have multiple colors available. And even sizes of the bloom head. You can get giant zinnias and you can get small little ball zinnias. So as I said, one of them was called pincushion flower. So the one on the left up there, you can see why it's called pincushion flower. It actually looks like there's little white pins sticking in this. Did you ever have one of those tomato kind of pin things and the pin sticking out? It kind of looks like that. But that flower, Scabiosa, also comes in other colors. It comes in white. It comes in kind of a purpley blue. It comes in more of a pink. So I just experimented with them last year, first time I grew them, and I grew the red. And
They dry really good.
they dry, and they also drop a lot of seeds. So I'm anxious to see if they actually voluntarily come up this spring. Snapdragons in the top center picture, and that's Celosia in the bottom center picture. And Celosia is another one that there are many varieties of Celosia, and I've seen some in some of these garden centers, and the plants like this big, and it already has a bloom on it, kind of like that. It almost like a little feather. Those aren't going to get any higher. You have to have a specific type of Celosia, so keep that in mind. This one's called High C, and it gets to be about 3 or 4 feet tall. And another great accent color in it. And I've had orange and yellow, as well as this pinky purple. And then there's some that are more of like a burgundy red. So there's a lot of variety in Celosia. And then, of course, the good old zinnias. And my favorite type of zinnia is called Benary's Giant, Benary's Giant. And they grow the biggest bloom heads. And again, such a variety of color, but there's nothing like that big zinnia bloom to really make your bouquet stand out. So any questions on annuals? A lot of my annuals, I'll start the seeds indoors and then plant out the seedlings. But they can also be directly sown into the garden bed once all danger of frost has passed. Then we have some biennials, and you get a plant but doesn't do much, and then the next after it overwinters, then it comes back again, and actually that's when you get the good blooms. That's a picture of Sweet William, and Sweet William is a type of dianthus, but it's the type of dianthus that gets the nice long stems. And I haven't found that it took 2 seasons to get the blooms. I got blooms first season, so, and I haven't grown the columbine or the foxglove. I tried foxglove and I couldn't get the seeds to germinate, so I'm not in, doesn't have much to say on that one. Any of you grow foxglove?
I have, but not South Dakota.
Yeah. It's one of those tricky ones.
I guess I have, but then the second year.
Yeah. It's just, yeah, there's
So
no
then
flowers till.
Then to me, it sounds like it's an annual then, like just, I don't know. I don't worry too much about biennials. I do a lot, however, with bulbs, tubers, and corms. And most of us probably are familiar with tulips and daffodils and bulb type flowers. Dahlias are grown from the tuber, and I had dahlias the first year, and then over winter, you have to dig up the tubers and store them over the winter, and then I probably had half of them that didn't make it through the winter, and so I thought, rather than buy a bunch of more dahlias, I had been reading about you can take cuttings from your tuber shoots up a root or a shoot. You can cut that off and then root that, and then it'll send it to another shoot. And so pretty soon you've got more dahlia plants. And sure enough, when I dug them up this fall, every one of them, even the ones that came from the little shoots that I rooted, had a whole mass of tubers in the ground under them. So we'll see what happens when I unpack them this year, how many I get. But anyway, I had 2 50-foot rows of dahlias this year. I had really good crop of dahlias. And they're my very favorite flower. I don't know about you. But they're just beautiful.
Where do you store those tubers?
They're in tubs. They're in tubs or crates with like sawdust shavings around them, and like some brown paper around it, and they're in my garage. And the garage stays about 40 degrees, so we'll see if that works or not. That's what I did last year. Some people have a basement that they can put them in and maintain, more constant temperature than a garage has, with the door opening and shutting all the time. But my lower level doesn't get cold enough, so the garage has to be my spot. So, but you don't want them to freeze either. So they're I call them the divas of the garden because they're the most beautiful flower, but they're also the hardest to work with. I think there's a lot of work to dahlias. And then ranunculus, which I have to be honest with you, I never heard of before 2 years ago. And then I was like, no, I don't know. And then last year I thought, well, I better try some. And I did not have the best luck with ranunculus. They come in a corm, and the corm looks like a little eye. And you soak those and they kind of swell up a little bit. And then you plant them in a tray and put them under grow lights, and you get shoots, and then you have to like separate them and plant them out in the field. And I had a lot of them that just didn't make it once they got out to the field. They really struggled, whether it was the weather or rabbits, I don't know, but I had a lot of trouble with ranunculus. So I'm not sure I'm going to invest in corms again. But whenever you see pictures of ranunculus, they look a lot like like a rose. They're really beautiful. You can get them. And then there are perennials. Daisies, black-eyed Susans, Veronica, yarrow, as well as like peonies. A lot of flower farmers do a lot with peonies. And so those are nice because obviously they're perennials, they will come back. And so I had quite a few black-eyed Susans last year, and the yarrow came back really nice. And there's even many colors in the family of the yarrow type of flower too. So one thing to consider when you're going to, if you think, well, I'd like to try a cut flower garden, you need to find a sunny area because these flowers are like most where they need at least a full, as it says, 6 to 8 hours of sun. Of course, in the middle of summer, they don't mind if they get a little shade, but they really thrive in direct sun. My cutting garden behind my house is that size, 3 by 10. So it's amazing how many flowers you can get in a 3 by 10 garden bed. And you wouldn't even have to start that large. If you didn't want 10 feet, you could do 6 or 8. The 3 feet is nice because you could reach everything. So you could have it along a fence or along the side of your house and not have to be able to walk around both sides. So that's why the 3 feet is nice. So here's a sample layout. This is from a company called the Gardener's Workshop. And the Gardener's Workshop is sort of like the probably have started more flower farmers on their journey than any other place. Not only do they have seeds, but they have online courses. So if you wanted to really deep dive in and learn about how to be a flower farmer, they also have courses on, growing in tunnels and working with florists. And they've got even like if you wanted to grow flowers for weddings, they've got courses on that. They've got a lot of how-to videos. There's a blog on their website. They have several books that have been put out. The first book, the woman who started the Gardener's Workshop is called Lisa Mason Ziegler, and her first book was called Cool Flowers. And she's been a flower farmer for over 25 years. And cool flowers are those hardy annuals that you can set out even before the last frost. And so she wrote a book about that, saying, your grandmas knew all about this, but we've all kind of forgotten, but there are flowers that are really hardy and you can put out in the very early spring. You could even plant them in fall and let them overwinter and they'll come up fine. She also wrote the Cut Flower Handbook, which is her latest book. And she has written a book called Vegetables Love Flowers, and it's all about flowers attract those pollinators, and then that helps your vegetables, right? So how you can interplant or companion plant, and but it's really a book about flower growing more than vegetable growing, but it's kind of deceiving. This book is in the library here. If any of you want to check it out, this is my copy, but I noticed that there is a copy here of that book. And
Is that first book yours?
yeah, these are all mine. What was the other book that's in the library? Oh, the Florette. Have you ever heard of Florette Flower Farm? Her book about cut flower gardening is in the library as well. And that was another book that I devoured when I was learning about all this stuff. So you can see you take your 3 by 10 and you break it up into zones, and you put your tall stuff in the back, like they've got sunflowers in those yellow spots. And zinnias can get quite tall, so those are towards the back. But because there are so many kinds of zinnias, she's got 3 different plots for 3 different types of zinnias. And basil in the front, because that's a good filler flower. And coxcomb, which is a type of celosia. And have you seen coxcomb? They actually like wave like the comb on the rooster's head, but they're real furry and real bright colors. So you don't have to do those particular cut flowers in yours, but she sells a packet of seeds that will give you this garden. So she's got the plan for, these are the seeds you buy, here's how you lay out your garden, and this is what it'll end up looking like. Another flower farmer, I know this is offering a course on how to grow your own cut flower garden, and this is her sample. She uses 3 different garden beds to lay out rows of celosia and zinnias and sunflowers, and what else has she got? Cosmos. She's even got gomphreena in there, which is another little filler flower that makes these little balls of pops of color that are really hard to harvest. So at my house, I have my 10 by 3 cutting garden, but when you're on the porch and you're looking out, you're seeing the landscaping along the back and all that, like flowers that are growing over there. But you have to look straight down to see my cutting garden because it's right on the other side of that lilac shrub. So you have to get right up to the screen and then look down to see if anything's blooming or not. So it's easier to just go outside and walk around and see it. So it faces south, so it gets that good all day sunlight. But because it's not the most beautiful garden in the world, it doesn't matter because I can't see it from my house. Okay. Obviously, the very most important thing is the soil. You have to have good, healthy soil. When you're first getting that garden bed, let's say you're going to use an area where there's sod right now, you amend that soil with some organic fertilizer. You might even want to put in some like peat moss or something in there to get it nice and loamy and fluffy. And you do want to have a good source of nutrients for your flowers to grow and do well. That note, never step on the bed after it's been prepared. That compacts that soil and makes it harder to grow your things. So you probably already know that just from all your other gardening that you do. But again, that's why we have a kind of a narrow flower bed. Okay, so if you put your seeds in or your sprouts in, don't mulch anything until they're big enough to get past that mulch. Otherwise, you're just going to suffocate them. But you do want to mulch because that helps keep the weeds down and the moisture in. So what can we do? It's too early to plant anything. Well, this is the time to order your seeds. As I mentioned, you can get seeds from the Gardener's Workshop, and that's the name of the website, thegardenersworkshop.com. You can get seeds from Johnny's Selected Seeds, has a whole section on cut flowers. And so those are the 2 places that I get most of my flower seeds. You have to decide, okay, am I going to start my seedlings early in the house on heat mats and seed trays and under grow lights, which is, you want to do a big production like I do at the flower farm, that's what I do. Or you can just sort of wait until after the last chance of frost has gone by and plant your seeds directly in the garden bed. First, you have to have that garden bed ready though. So if you hadn't done that yet, you might want to start some seeds in some little things with, maybe you could have You know, some of those things that have a clear plastic lid, you can make your own little humidity dome and, you don't have to spend a lot of money to start seeds at home if you're doing it on a small scale. And then get your garden bed ready, and then you'll have seedlings to put in the ground right away. You get a little head start on your blooms if you can do that, rather than direct seeding at the middle to end of May, June. So starting seeds, you can do the seed trays, or I do the little tiny cubes where you take the mixture and you soil block. You have a little contraption that goes in the dirt and you push it and you get these little soil blocks, and then you have to put one seed in each block. It's kind of tedious, but you end up with seedlings taking up just a tiny bit of dirt in each one, and you get a lot of seedlings started on a tray. Got the heat mats. That's a ping pong table with heat mats on it. And my one shelf of grow lights. I actually have a second shelf now, not quite as tall as that, but I do have other spots if I get too many plants that need to be under the grow lights at the same time. I put one of those aluminum kind of, it's one of those blankets that's supposed to keep you warm if you have an emergency. So anyway, I have that hung on the wall behind just to reflect some light back in. That's probably not essential, but it seems to help. And so then you get some seedlings. And on the right are actually my dahlia cuttings that are sprouting from when I cut them off the tubers and I stuck them in the growing medium. So I'm getting some nice plants from that. The ones on the left are actually sweet peas, which I grew the first year, and I didn't grow them last year, but I ended up with some volunteer sweet peas from the first batch. But that was a picture from, they were actually the first seedlings I ever started in my basement. So I had to have a picture of that. One handy thing, and a lot of you already know this, but one of those photo saving, I don't know what you call it, like a little travel suitcase almost, like when then you have these little things that pull out, you can keep photos in them. That is where I keep my seeds. And I keep that in a refrigerator. And so I can kind of, so I've got a couple of those. And so I can keep my seeds sort of like sorted and keep them cool, and they're easy to get to. Succession planting is something that some flowers, you do need to plant them like every couple of weeks so that you can keep getting blooms, because they are not the kind of flowers that if you cut, they will come back. Sunflowers, for example, one and done. You cut your sunflower bloom with your stem, that stem that's still on the ground isn't going to send up any more shoots. So if I want more sunflowers, I need to plant them every couple of weeks. I need to plant more seeds so that I have sunflowers coming all season long. So you do need to read the packet about the seeds to know whether you need to plant more of them throughout the season or not.
Sorry, so do you need the, do you leave the stock then? Once you cut it?
I'll leave it until I have time to pull it. And then when I pull them, then I can put more in that bed. So I don't take the time when I'm harvesting to pull the stalk, but I'll get to it on the day that I'm not harvesting flowers. If that makes sense? Okay. Okay. Obviously, once you've got your seeds or your seedlings in the ground, you've got to keep them watered so that they don't dry up and float away. Especially when you first put them in the ground. As I said before, wait until you mulch. Support netting. A lot of wind in this area. And so if you've got a lot of flowers and it's windy, some of these windstorms will just knock them right over, and then they're not going to do anything for you. So I used what's called Hortonova trellising, which is support netting. And so you can see these are about 6-inch squares. And you put a stake on this end and this end, and then you stretch this out about every 6 feet or so. You put another stake and you stretch that out. I usually put mine like 15 inches off of the ground, and then as the plants grow, they grow right through this. And then when the winds come, that holds them up and keeps them from toppling over. Even on my cosmos, because cosmos can get to be like over 6 feet tall, I'll put a second layer of support netting before they get that tall. I'll put a whole other thing so that they can go through a second layer, because they are really prone to falling over if you don't support them. Again, this is something you can get from Johnny's or the Gardener's Workshop, or there are lots of other gardening supply places that you can get this support netting. Every week, you need to get out those little tiny weeds that are coming, because if you let them go, they're going to take over and basically smother out your flowers. So I use a standing hoe, but I also have a little hand one, but both of them have just like a blade on one side, and that you can just sort of like scoop it. It's super easy when the weeds are like an inch high. If you stay on top of it, it's pretty easy to keep your garden fit. All right, here's the main thing. This is a cutting garden. It is not a landscape garden. So you have to cut those flowers. So a lot of times, if you walk out and look at it, it's just a bunch of green plants, nothing much happening there. So it's not much to look at. When you get those buds and they're just about ready to open, that's when you harvest most of these flowers. Although not zinnias. Zinnias need to be all the way open, or they won't open up once they're cut. So each flower you kind of have to learn which ones do you harvest when they're in that cracked bud stage, and which ones do you wait until they're full and bloom. But it's recommended to be out in your cutting garden twice a week once you get to that stage where you can start cutting flowers. Like, well, I don't need any flowers right now. Too bad. Get out there to cut them. Because you won't keep getting flowers if you don't keep cutting on them. It really helps them to produce more. Now, what is in the yellow? Essential. It's essential to a great cutting garden. I don't know why that turned out yellow. That's just supposed to be underlined. Okay, it is really essential to be out there cutting. When I say cutting, I mean like really cutting down. You cut quite a ways down on the stem, cutting these. And I use a tool. It's just a little hand pruner, but it's just really nice, and you can keep sharpening the blade. Got it at the Gardener's Workshop. So when you harvest your flowers, all right, you need a clean container. It doesn't have to be a 5-gallon bucket, but for like sunflowers and tall zinnias, your really tall, sturdy flowers, you kind of need a 5-gallon bucket. But for some of them, you can get by with a shorter one, but you need some water in the bottom. And I always put 1 tablet of, it's called Crystal Floral Preservative, and it's basically a little chlorine tablet. And it's just a small little tablet, 1 in the bottom of each bucket of water. Smell like chlorine. Okay. And again, you can get this at the Gardener's Workshop. But you get 1 tablet in the water. So as you're cutting these flowers, you put them in the water immediately. They're already getting something that is a floral food and bacteria killer. So it helps your flowers to hydrate, and it helps them to basically have a longer life. Harvest when it's cool. Most mornings when I'm harvesting, I'm out there as soon as I can get myself out of bed and get out there before it gets hot. Number one, I don't want to be out there when it's 95 degrees, but the flowers don't want to be cut when it's 95 degrees either. So early in the morning or late in the or early in the evening as well. If you are on YouTube and you ever have nothing to do, search flower farmers and you'll find all kinds of videos from flower farmers. And a lot of times they're harvesting with one of those lamps on their heads. And they've got so many flowers they need for the morning and it's too late and they're out there in the dark with one of those headlamps on. I've never done that, but I know it's possible. Use those sharp bypass shears like I showed you. The bypass shears are better for the stem than the ones that bluntly meet and cut like that. So kind of like a scissor effect is what you want. Cut to the base. Even if you only need a 1 foot flower for your base, cut way down because that's what dictates where the next shoots are going to come up. And you don't want your plant to get a bunch of shoots at the top. You want them to all be coming more from the bottom. Once I've cut, let's say I've cut the zinnia, okay, I'll take, and I always wear gloves. I should have brought my gloves. They're the kind that have the, like a knit glove, and then they have the coating on the one side. The ones I get are Atlas brand. Anyway, they're nice and tight, and so you feel like you don't have gloves on, but you take it and you just and pull off all of the foliage that is on the stem besides what's right up by the bloom. Because all that foliage is in your base water, makes your base water fill with bacteria very quickly. So you want to get rid of those. So you might as well strip them off out in the garden, and then those leaves and bits can just be there and you start making compost, right? So they're my sunflowers. Now I want you to look carefully. Some of those sunflowers are almost all the way open. Some of them are barely open. They really should be barely open when you harvest a sunflower. But with sunflowers, I mean, it's like one day they can be tightly closed and the next day they're fully open. And if you're not out there and cutting them at the, you do get them open farther, but ideally they're cut soon. Like the ones in the middle where they're barely open.
How long will they last?
Boy, a sunflower, I've had sunflowers last 9 to 10 days. If I've cut them when they just have one little petal kind of starting to come up. And I keep them hydrated and cool. That's the other thing. When, I think I'll get to that in a second. Allow them to recover from being cut by getting them into a cool area for a while. Now, some people have the ability to get them right into a refrigerated area or an air conditioned house right away. Like the ones I cut from my cutting garden at home, I just take that little bucket and hold it, and it's air conditioned in the house, and then they're nice and cool. The ones that come from my flower farm, I don't have any way to keep them cool. I'll put them in shade next to the shed, so it's a little cooler there. But then I've got them in my air conditioned vehicle as I'm driving to town, and then get them into the house. And I don't have a cooler per se, a flower cooler, but I'm working on trying to get a refrigerator that can just be used for storing flowers. And I'm not sure if I'm going to have it out at the farm or have it at home, but I need more ways to keep my flowers cool.
If you have that, what temperature?
Ideally, most flowers now, like sunflowers don't want to be cool, like zinnias don't want to be cool, but most flowers, you can keep them in the upper 30s to in the 40s, and they'll be fine. Yeah, I was surprised by that. Mine are more like in the 40s. The next thing is to change out your water every few days. So even if you haven't put them in a vase yet, and you've got them hydrating and they're still in that bucket, change that water. Trim off the bottom of the stem, put them in back in clean water, and it's almost essential to put them in a clean bucket with clean water and another tablet, and put them back in them until you're ready to make bouquets out of them. Or put them in vases. If you put them in vases, you still need to do this. Change the water frequently. The more frequently you change the water, the longer your flowers will last. And trim off that little bit of stem at the bottom, because that's where the clogging tends to happen first.
If you add a tablet to like vases when you change it each time.
No, I know. But I have packets of floral food. You know, a lot of times you get a bouquet, you get that little packet of floral food, and you're like, that stuff doesn't work. Stick it in a drawer somewhere. Well, with a fresh flower, that stuff does work. Or if you get a bouquet from the florist and you trim off the ends, sometimes that will keep them living longer too. That stuff really does work, but as long as the stems can still take up the water with that floral food.
You have a homemade recipe for flower food.
No, I've heard a lot of different things. So people say put an aspirin in the water, put a penny in the water, or a little drop of chlorine. I don't do any of that. I just
Does the water temperature matter? And like your vases?
I haven't found it to make a difference. That's what a sunflower should look like when you harvest it, just barely peeking up. And the reason is bugs haven't had a chance to get in there and chew on the petals. And it's going to keep opening. So you might as well harvest it before you get any little, bugs hanging out on there. So they just tend to last longer that way. One thing I want to say about sunflowers. There are lots of different types of sunflowers. These are not the sunflowers that develop seeds in the center. Those are not over. These are what we call pollenless sunflowers. And there's a brand called ProCut that has the best sunflowers. So anyway, make sure that your sunflowers are pollenless, because they're going to be better for bouquets. They're not going to develop those seed heads. They're not going to drop pollen all over your table. And they will last longer. That's a Cosmo that's just ready for harvesting, because see, the color is there, but it hasn't burst open yet. And so it's just got that color crack on it. That's the stage that you want to harvest those in. So, once they open up, then they do have a little bit of pollen in there. Insects come and they, once they've done their job of pollinating, then they're ready to die. So if you can get to them before that stage, they will last longer. Okay, these are the things I talked about, clean buckets, changing the water, cutting up the stems. So I know it's too tiny to read, but that's basically what I've already told you. So Lisa Mason Ziegler is the Gardener's Workshop person. And those are the books I told you about: Cool Flowers, Vegetables Love Flowers, the Cut Flower Handbook. I find those books invaluable. And the last one that she did, the Cut Flower Handbook, is the best of the three. It's really, really good. You can get that from thegardenersworkshop.com, or you can get it on Amazon. But if you get it from her business, she'll sign it for you. I have learned a lot on YouTube and by listening to podcasts, and so these are some of my favorite ones. A lot of people are familiar with The Garden Answer. She is in Washington State,
Oregon.
Oregon, yeah.
Oh,
Sunshine and Flora is from Steve Island. And I just think she's the most down to earth. Plus, she's in our zone, which helps a lot. Um, but I've gotten a lot of good information by watching Christina on Sunshine and Flora. Podcasts, there's something called the Slow Flower Society, and it's a lot of flower growers, and they're promoting basically that you buy local rather than imported flowers. That's their big thing. Seed Talk is Lisa is the same Lisa from the Gardener's Workshop, and Lane also works at the Gardener's Workshop, and those two gals talk in depth about, maybe this week they're talking about zinnia seeds. Next week they'll talk about scabiosa seeds with it. And then the nice thing about podcasts is you can go back and search through and find the one that you want to listen to. So you don't have to only listen to this week's flower. And then there's another guy who has been into flowers for many years, and it's just called the Flower Podcast. He interviews a lot of flower growers about all different aspects of flower growing. So those are interesting ones, and there are many, many others, especially if you wanted to get more into podcasts about actual flower farming or YouTube videos about flower farming. There are untold numbers of them. Of course, we've got our seed library program, so you can learn more. In Sioux Falls on March 22nd, the day after the spring fling here, is a spring fling in Sioux Falls. The Minnehaha Master Gardeners offer that, and it's a day-long seminar with several speakers and several breakout sessions and lunch, and it only costs $35, and I think that's just basically to pay for lunch. Their South Dakota Specialty Producers has a special group or subgroup just for flower growers. Johnny's, of course, and Gardener's Supply is another place that you can get seed trays, heat mats, and the netting, and the hose, just supplies that you might need for growing flowers. So my favorite quote: friends are the flowers in the garden of life. So thank you all for being friends and coming to hear about my flowers. Hope you enjoy your backyard cutting garden, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might. Your favorite mulch? Favorite mulch? Or what do you use for that? I try to get compost and just sort of like put mushroom compost is really good for flower bed. And I know Diane's greenhouse sells bags of mushroom compost. That's the type I've had the most luck with. There's also something called Bio 360, which is a plastic. It's a big plastic bowl or sheets, and it's biodegradable plastic. And you can actually like lay it out. You have to sort of like almost like put dirt on the sides to keep it from around here. It's what I found it's hard to keep it from blowing away. When your seeds are just seeds or seedlings, the wind comes and it just sort of like acts like a balloon, and if your plants are bigger, it'll stay down just fine. But it's called Bio 360, and it's a biodegradable plastic, real thin plastic that you put over. It does a great job of keeping the weeds out if you can keep it from blowing away. I didn't use it last year because it was very frustrating to me to use it this year. So
The biodegradable, how long does it take to?
I found some pieces of it last year that were still hanging around. But most of it I could just take up at the end of the season and just put in the compost bin and it's gone.
And where would you get it?
Gardener Supply, Gardener's Workshop. She's real big on it, but I don't think it's as windy where she's from Virginia. So I don't think it's as windy where she lives. I've also used landscape fabric that has the holes cut in it every 6 inches. I'm still not sure what I'm gonna do about that. There are parts of it I like and parts of it I don't like. Mostly I don't do much except for a compost and then hoe it. As I'm hoeing weeds, it kind of gets hoed in. It seems to work the best for me.
What about from?
I think straw would be fine, as long as it doesn't have any seeds in it, and then, you know, which straw, but you have to be careful, make sure your straw doesn't have seeds, but. I've not used it, but I know that there are people.
I know I could draw and the lawn thing where it's got something in it.
Yeah, and even grass clippings, if your grass clippings haven't been treated with a lot of chemicals, there's no reason why you can't. Some people even will use newspaper or, you know, but you just have to, whatever you use, you have to keep it from like blowing away. But yeah, really, that's a hard part, I think. Yeah.
When you talk about cutting snapdragons, I mean, they're so small. I mean, where do you cut those?
Well, number one, you probably don't have the right variety of snapdragon.
Okay.
That might be part of it. There are certain varieties that will grow nice and tall. Then my snapdragons are a little 2 feet tall.
I don't have the right one.
But I cut them as low as I can and send up. What I find with snapdragons, though, they're photosensitive. And so wherever the sun is, that's where they lean. And so if you keep them out too long, pretty soon they're curled way over and then they don't. 3 times I tried this. So that's my hardest problem with snapdragons is that the tops of them always curve over and they don't stay nice and straight. They will in the garden, they're fine. And then the minute you cut them, they're like searching. They oh, yeah. So I don't know if I have to keep them in a lit room or.
Do you start zinnia seeds or do you just plant them in the ground because they grow so fast? I'm curious because
You want to know if I start my zinnia seeds or I plant them in the ground? I start them, but I succession plant with some others. So, but I like to start them because they're such a good staple for all my bouquets. I like to have them as soon as I can. But if I have garden space available after I'm done with that, then I'll plant some more zinnia seeds. I'm getting another pressure question.
and what's the secret to getting the stem large so you can cut it? Just have to wait. You know, I mean,
What is it? Yeah.
yeah, because you know, I sometimes will get ready to cut it and the stem is wobbling. Yeah,
Okay. Well, zinnia, you do a wiggle test. So you take your zinnia and you kind of just do this with it. And if it's just flopping around like that, it's not ready. If you do this and it just kind of goes like that, then it's ready. So you just have to wait until it can pass the wiggle.
You have one. How do you tell if it's a flower or a weed when they're first sprouting?
Well, usually it's like if it's in a nice line, it's a flower. If it's random, then, you know, and I don't just sprinkle seeds. But if in doubt, wait, because, you know, why? It's easy enough to just miss and get some of it anyway, so. But that's the way I tell any of my flowers are gonna grow. Yeah. I have a favor, if you are interested at all in finding out when The Twin Silos Flower Farm is going to be at farmer markets, or have a pop-up thing, or have any other special event going on. So I've done things like bouquet bars and that type of thing. I have a sign-up sheet up front, just for trying to get email addresses so I can send out an email just if there's something special going on.
You put
So
it
I
on
have some
Facebook
business
too?
cards there.
You put it on Facebook too when you do that?
Yes, I do.
You said just go to Facebook.
Let people come to the farm to see the flowers grow.
Well,
You told us where it is.
I don't have any plans to do, like a come and cut your own bouquet because it's on a working farm. There are cattle right on the other side of the fence and it's not real smooth and I didn't set it up within my people coming through. And then insurance is, I don't have insurance for that business. I've had, family members who wanted to see what the heck I'm doing. I've had them come out and, the people who are not steady on their feet, like more elderly, they just can't even go out there. And I have one friend who has, Parkinson's and she's not steady on her feet and she took a few steps and she was like, I can't do this because it's not real smooth. And it's probably not the safest place to be.
Are the flowers
So-
visible from the road where we
Yeah, actually they are. Yeah, you can kind of see them. So it's not like I'm going to say, no, you can't possibly stop out. But it's kind of like I said, it's not the most beautiful looking thing. It really isn't. You would think it'd be this, oh, look at all the flowers up there. Well, most of them aren't. If they're in full bloom, it's kind of like I see yes. So it doesn't look the greatest a lot of times.
Do many get wasted then? With that, you said sometimes. Shame. Do you do anything with them or just compost or?
Well, I try, that harvesting twice a week. The challenge is, all right, so I'll cut on Thursday or Friday morning for the farmer's market on Saturday morning. Well, what do I do with the flowers that I have to harvest on Monday night or Tuesday? So I have some subscriptions. There are some businesses in town that have prepaid for me to bring them a bouquet every week. There are some people who, like at Mother's Day, for their Mother's Day gift, they bought their mom 4 bouquets for the summer, or some fundraisers that I've donated flowers, 4 different bouquets for the summer. So I can use those for that. And then I take bouquets to anybody that I personally just want to surprise with the bouquet, or I take little bouquets. Like sometimes when you're working with these flowers, all of a sudden you'll be like, shoot, that broke off and it's only like this one. I'll take some of my rejects or some of my broken ones and I'll make little jelly jar bouquets, little pint jar bouquets, and I'll take those up to the nursing home. So I try not to just throw them away, but yeah, sometimes I end up throwing them.
Are you a single woman job or do you have people come in and help you with all this?
I am it. In fact, I barred my husband from helping because he's not helpful. When I told you last year I had sunflowers and I thought I had succession, all of a sudden one day they were like, and he has helped me by spraying with a little insecticide. 70 it was Roundup.
Oh.
So he's been barred from the farm. His help is like when I had the field before, we have a lot of manure, and so we got that in there and spread all around. And then he'll put some fencing around so the cows can't get in my garden. That's funny.
Now you have the ability to put in aged manure, so I'm guessing that you fertilize once a year in that pit. Or do you feed off and on through the season and you fill it up with it?
I've only used the aged manure the first year, and so I've had 2 seasons of flowers. So this year, I may put some on the bed before, while it's, kind of waiting. maybe like in April or early May. And then just try to work that into the soil. Or I may wait, not do that, and put in some kind of water soluble and just water it once in a while with water soluble fertilizer. Because that's the only fertilizing I've done in the last 2 years. It's just, and it's been fine, but after with now the third season, I think I might need to do amend that a little bit. You're talking like an eighth or sixth of an acre, and it's got to be pretty large. I'm going to add more. That's an awful lot of compost to buy, or so I kind of have to figure out.
Do you rotate your flowers?
Yes, for sure. So the first year I had sunflowers in row 1, and last year I had zinnias in row 1. And next year, I'm not sure what this coming year, I don't know, but I think it's healthier for the plants to do that. And so I'll put my dahlias up there this year. Row 1 is the easiest row to get to, so that's like, those are my 2 workhorse flowers. So, my dahlias don't bloom until the end of August, so I might not want them to row 1. You got to think about it. In the fall, once everything's frozen, I just pulled them up and stuck them in the compost pile. So my beds have been sitting virtually empty all winter long. And cover cropping is another thing I'm going to look into doing over winter. Put something in that have like little plant life in there before winter, and then when the winter fills it off. But you still have that plant life in there. But right now, they're just kind of, I mean, there's a couple of rows that the landscape fabric is still on. I don't know what they're going to do.
So will you just go ahead and replant in the same hole? Then you take the fabric off?
No, I'm planning to take it off and maybe move it to another bed or just not use it at all. I wasn't real happy with the landscape fabric, to tell you the truth. I felt like it caused more problems.
There's a lot of controversy about digging up your soil for the bacteria and the nemones and whatever. So that's why I was asking if you put the new plant in the old plant spot without disturbing the rest. Or if you
my thought, one of the reasons I don't particularly like this landscape fabric with the holes pre-made in it, I've got tube irrigation running under it, and then if I had a problem where one of them sprung a leak, it's like, how do you get to it? And that happened a couple of times, and it's just so much easier if I didn't have it to kind of keep track of my irrigation. And like I said, if you're hitting the weeds when they're little, you can stay on top of them super easy. So I'm kind of thinking I won't use the landscaping fabric. I kind of like landscape fabric in the rows between my flower beds to keep, I don't have to worry about the weeds there. And that's where I found it the most useful. But the stuff with the holes in it, I thought, oh, that would be just great. It would be perfect for my zinnias and stuff. I just didn't like it.
so do you till then?
No, I just called it. It was tilled the first season when it was going from a cornfield to a flower garden. I had it tilled really deeply. Well, but since then, I'm more of a, what do they call it? Till farm.
Yeah.
Thank you so very much. Don't forget to sign up with your email and everything at all. Thanks for coming, everyone. Next month.